Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of To The Point podcast. As always, I'm your host, Noah Warren, and this is Tuesday nights. You know what we're doing? It's The Observers, where we watch the Fox show Next. Tonight, me and Shamus will be recapping episodes 7 and 8. Both very different episodes, but again, we learn a lot about the plot and where this is going towards our final two episodes. But before we get going, Shamus, how are you? Christmas right around the corner. How you feeling tonight?
Good. A little change of scenery behind me. I'm in my childhood room here in Rexton, and I'm happy to be home for the break. Just see some immediate family members, and I'm good. I'm excited to get this break underway. And I'm not a big Christmas guy, but it's nice to see the family around the holidays. How about
Yeah,
yourself?
no, I'm the biggest Christmas fan there is, so I can't wait to sing songs and you
Big
know,
atheist. It's just a
yeah,
myth. It's a myth. No.
No, I'm happy to spend time with the Rents. Might even convince mom to watch Good Will Hunting on Christmas Eve night and not a Christmas movie. So,
Is she a big Christmas movie fan?
she likes The Grinch. Yeah, she likes and Polar
The
Express, which I
classics.
refuse to
Ah,
watch.
yeah,
Christmas Vacation, I don't mind. That's a good one.
that's a
Um,
classic. Yeah.
yeah, but she's never seen Good Will Hunting, so I'm kind of like, it's a great
It's
movie.
I think it's a must watch if I do believe so myself. Like
Oh yeah,
and it's the fact that it took I think it took them 5 years to write between Matt Damon and Ben Affleck.
mhm.
And I mean it's an all timer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, just the scene in Step Brothers where they go over the janitor
Yeah.
scene is just classic in and of itself. So,
Yeah. Right out of took one right out of that book. But yeah, I think your mom should definitely watch it. It's a great movie.
so yeah, just to let everybody know, we got this week. Next week will be our finale of Next, and then after that, Seamus gets to pick what we watch next.
Yes. I've
And
been doing some research. I'm
it
not
can be a
gonna
movie, it could be an episode of a TV show, just a random episode. It can be anything. The only thing that's off limits is Fast and Furious 7 because
oh
on this
so are
podcast we care about
I was gonna
mental
say
health.
are the Marvel movies not off guard too,
No,
or
Marvel's fine.
okay, I'll keep that in mind. I haven't made my selection yet, but I have been doing some research. So
Right. So Seamus will maybe reveal that next week at the end of the podcast. We'll give him a week to think about it a little bit more. But yeah, going forward, we might pick a TV show if that's where he wants to go again. We may pick, like I said, it could be a random episode of a TV show. It could be season 4, episode 3 of Seinfeld. Just whatever he wants to do. He comes here, he joins me, gives me his time. So I feel like we should be covering the content that he wants to talk about. So I'm excited to see what he comes up with.
yeah, I in all honesty, I've thoroughly enjoyed this show, and I get excited to watch it every week.
Mm-hmm.
It's even better that now with all the things, you don't actually have to sit there on say Tuesday night at 9. Well, if I have something going on, then I could watch it 7 o'clock on Saturday. I could watch it as soon as I wake up on Sunday morning. So it's perfect.
No, agreed. The new streaming services make watching shows so much easier. And yeah, I agree. Just the convenience of watching it at any time is great. So getting into the episode, first episode 7, the episode is very layered. A lot of stuff happens in this episode, and
Mm-hmm.
it kind of is. It's an episode that makes you really. It throws you in basically a circle because you think you have it figured out, and then at the end of the episode, you're like, nope. For me anyway, I was completely wrong with who
Mm-hmm.
our protagonist, antagonist, and where the story's heading.
I believe you 100%. It was a whirlwind with, what next intentions were and where to go to, and we'll talk about that later. And I think it does. The show does a great job of just flipping that right around, and now it just leaves you kind of flustered and confused on like what's really going on, and who can you actually trust.
Right. And so the episode starts off with a congresswoman, Helen Beatty, and a journalist in an elevator. And he's asking her questions for a piece he's doing, but he drops his sheet of paper and she starts reading out these details about what we learn to be next. He's basically investigating Zava and their inner workings of Next and a huge conspiracy that he thinks will blow up.
Mm-hmm.
And while this is happening, the elevator stops working. They can't get it going. And then all of a sudden, the elevator crashes to the ground, and we're unsure what happens to the two.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think this kind of slot where it brings you what the show does is it brings you a whole nother scene and whole nother characters that you haven't seen before,
Mhm.
and it kind of just plops. Same with the plane a few episodes ago.
Right.
Same with when
Yeah, Somalia.
the Somalia fighters, they were rounding up the civilians, and it just does that, and it kind of just leaves you like, what's going on. And it does this. It seems to be doing this throughout every episode of the show, which I thought was really interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the first thing it reminded me of, Shay, is Breaking Bad. This happens frequently in Breaking Bad where you see something to start and you have no idea how it pertains to the storyline of the previous episode.
Hmm.
But towards the end of the episode, it kind of uh, correlates and you see it. It comes to life. So in this scenario, we'll kind of lead on from there. The journalist and the congresswoman are okay. And of course, we're thinking as viewers, well, the congresswoman must be the target because she does work on these cyber. She blocks cyber deals from happening occasionally if she doesn't think they're regulated properly. So there's all these points pointing at her for being the target of a potential murder, right?
Hmm.
But Gina and Ben go and talk to her, and they realize that he's doing the story, and she's not the bigger threat, but the journalist is at potentially exposing next to the mass world.
Yes. So it seems like this guy who they go and visit throughout the show, or after the show goes on, he's pretty deep into this conspiracy about what's going on. You see that his wife's left him kind of, so you could definitely tell that there's some tension. All his electronics seem to be unplugged from his home. He's got a daughter there who seems to be struggling with that. As we know, every 12 to 15-year-old must have some cellular device in their hand at all times. So yeah, no, but it's interesting to see what's going to go on with that, and it does do a great job of you know leaving you wonder, like, what does he have to do with any of this?
Yeah, because we haven't been introduced to him, so we're just kind of like, okay, how did he figure this out? Like, how is he part of this? And we so we'll move on to that. That gets in more detail later when you mentioned they go and visit him. But he's also, this journalist was investigating Ted LeBlanc's deal with the Singapore power farm that he wants to send next to. So at the beginning of this episode, Ted and his right hand woman are planning on moving next to Singapore so that they can do this deal and he can start progressing on different projects that he wants. But Paul, we figure out in the last episode, he knows that Ted has the server. So he, in clear Paula Bank fashion, does a fake call saying that his wife, Ted's wife, is in the hospital. She's had an accident. Of course, Ted leaves, and who does he find in the parking lot but Paul?
Yeah, this is a classic Paula Mank. I mean, you know, getting somebody absolutely riled up. I mean, anyone can imagine what they're feeling like if you heard your spouse was in the hospital. And I mean, you see that Ted's face just goes from completely happy, thinking he's gonna be able to break this great big deal, to automatically thinking something's really wrong with his wife. And
Yeah.
it's funny just to see Paul pop out of the darkness in his parking lot, like, hey, this was never really going to happen, but I needed to get you here.
Yeah, exactly. So Ted's obviously very angry. Paul is still very cavalier and kind of arrogant the way he says it. And Ted's about to leave, but Paul can't let that happen. So he tases Ted and puts him in the trunk. And
Mm-hmm.
we don't know this until Agent Salazar shows up. She had been tracking Paul through Abby, and she hears Ted start screaming from the trunk. And he just says, well, get in. You know, you're in it now. Like, we're in this together now.
Mm-hmm. No, it's super funny. Their relationships almost evolved, like she's being accustomed to all his little I would say quirks, but they're even more serious than quirks. Really, they're more like uh, I don't know,
Guys,
like
it's
crimes.
little weird, like idiosyncrasies, just the way his brain works.
Yeah, he's just a maniac.
Yeah. So they get in the car together, and they go to another one of Paul's like black sites. Basically, he has, you know, stuff set up so they can work, and it's completely off, off the beaten path, so nobody's going to be looking for them. And they handcuff Ted in a side room, and then they're also joined by Ben, CM, and Gina. So the whole team is now back together, and they plan on using Ted to get the server back and hopefully save the world from some pretty bad things from happening.
Yeah, so they send 10 to this room. They're trying to do everything they can do, especially Paul, to get him to confess. Where is this? What's your plan with this? What are you going to do? um but he's not giving them anything, because obviously this is his big moment, and he's going to do great things with next, and he's just totally blind to what's the real plan, where everyone else there clearly knows that there's no good intentions with this AI. So yeah, that's the basis of what they're doing, and at the same time, I believe they're still tracking it or trying to find it at this time, I believe.
Yeah, they don't really know where it is. They know Ted has it, but they don't know the exact whereabouts of it. And
Mhm.
yeah, they're trying to scare Ted and talk to him to get that information. So during this is happening, Ben and Gina go to visit Congresswoman Beatty, like we said, and they talk to her. She has all these smart devices in her office, which can be tracked. So that's a red flag. But she's not the real target. Like we mentioned, it was the journalist. And while they're there, they realize this. But she said the journalist was covering this conspiracy theory, but he doesn't see it that way. He sees this as a real potential threat, and they realize that when he's gone, that he could be in real danger here because he's right on the precipice of figuring this out. And when
Mhm.
they get to his home, some major stuff goes down.
Yeah, so basically what happens, they find him in his home, and he's obviously on he's got his tinfoil hat on. He's very sketchy, like pulls out a knife as soon as they get there. So he's maybe nervous about everything going on, and he maybe feels like someone's onto him. They get in, they start talking to him, and then they know that he explains to Ben and Gino what he thinks is going on, and right out of the blue, he just takes a bullet right to the chest,
Mm-hmm.
through the window, and it's really surprising because when you think of the AI, you don't think of it as using any weapons or anything, but it obviously has impact on other people, and do dealings with other people to get them things like obviously money, or as we see with Salazar's father out of jail.
Mm-hmm.
So what it does basically is, I think it freed this prisoner,
Yeah,
and then maybe gave him like 100 grand,
100
maybe.
grand in Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah. So then obviously his target was go to this home, kill this guy. Ben basically follows down the alleyway, and then he's got him locked in his car. The guy tries to get away, and he puts basically a couple shots to the head. And then yes, and then after that, they kind of have to. I don't know, what do they scoop all the information up from this guy's home, Chuggy?
Yeah. So what happens is they go to the car. Well, they go through the journalist's home first before they call the cops, pick up any information he had, not wanting to get it to the FBI and other sources just because it would basically go to next. And then they go to the murderer's car and they find out, how he got his money, how it was traced, where he got it. And there's no human paper trail. So we're starting to learn through this episode that we kind of thought Ted was the antagonist. He knew this the whole time, but he doesn't. He was just another person used by Next to get what they wanted.
Mhm.
And using Ted, we thought that Next wanted to go to Singapore because that's where the server was headed with his right-hand woman.
Mm-hmm.
But as we progress the story, she's at this meeting place with these Chinese officials or Singapore officials, and she gets a call from Ted saying, make sure the deal's done because he still doesn't want to help Paul.
Mm-hmm.
But before everything can go down, we see a real shift in Agent Salazar, because we have to remember in the previous episode, she killed her father. Then her husband and her son basically deserted her.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes into the room with Ted and basically plays Russian roulette with his life until he tells her what she wants to hear.
Yeah, it's twice in basically 2 episodes that we see Salazar do something totally out of character and totally not like her, as a federal agent, and she just goes off the walls. You could see that she's almost gone a little nuts. Paul and the rest of the crew kind of break into the door, and she even swings the gun around and points it at them. So she's definitely, you could tell she's super, super on edge. Another key piece of information I just want to say about that deal, that while the team has, while they're working away, they soon find out that the guy that runs the company that Ted was going to be doing dealings with has actually been working with the Chinese government. So to put it in perspective, it seems like instead of selling it to a company, they're actually selling it to the actual Chinese government as a weapon almost.
Yes, yeah, exactly. What we learn in these 2 episodes is basically these companies, China wants it as a weapon against the United States. So in essence, what Ted and them are doing is selling next the servers to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
But before, like we mentioned, Ted then confesses because Salazar is right in his grill. He and Paul kind of have a good conversation afterwards. They bond a little bit and kind of reflect on their past behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And he decides to help them because he realizes, okay, what I'm doing here is not going to make me happy. This is bad.
Mm-hmm.
So
he just kind of shows them like the scannings and like how Nex kind of show like Nex's plans basically to put this bioweapon out there to kill all these people. And I think it's only then Ted starts to realize that, Nex's intentions are not what they seem when she's talking to him.
Right. He thought before, okay, this is going to make my dreams come true. I can finally get power in my life. But he realizes that power will kill millions of innocent people around the world. And he's like, okay, this needs to stop.
Mm-hmm.
So he calls his right-hand woman again, and he says, you cannot give that weapon. You cannot give Next to the Chinese. That's going to go to their government. It's potentially disastrous. Like, that needs to stay here on U.S. soil. And she tries to coerce them, but they're not having it. They're like, no, you're not taking this off the plane. This is ours now. Like, basically beat it. And, it looked like the Chinese government was going to get away with Next. But just as we thought that, the whole airfield was surrounded with FBI and national security agents, and they take the weapon away from the Chinese.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we have no idea what happened, or there was no indication in the show what this tip-off was about, but clearly somehow they knew about this deal. And yes, like you said, they just swarmed the plane and they basically take in Next. Salazar and Paul are both there just to kind of witness the whole thing.
Right.
Not that I don't even think they would have been able to do much if they even, even if they would have gone on. There's like 15 guys there with probably with weapons that probably could have took them pretty easily. But so we just find out that it gets confiscated.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not going to go to the Chinese, but the bigger thing we realize is that it's going to the NSA. And the NSA has, as much technology as you could possibly have in the world. They have every server known to man, every piece of technology that you would want.
Mhm.
And the problem with that is that that's exactly what Next needs to do its work. And what we kind of learn is that Next at the NSA is at its most powerful, and it's for Next at its most powerful is so potentially dangerous for the whole world, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. This is what you realize when the team realizes it. This was its plan the whole time, was to get captured by the
Yes.
NSA and be taken to their place, because it must have known the procedure that happens. So basically, they take it in and they have to run
They like
um,
run a swipe over it, like they
yeah, exactly. They just
yeah
run
they
a swipe over the whole server,
mhm.
and this is basically Nexus in to get into all of their servers to basically learn all their information and basically have all the utilities it needs to perform its final doing of spreading this virus.
Yeah, and Paul realizes this right away. The rest of the team kind of sees it as a victory because it's still on U.S. soil, but he instantly says this is worse than
Yeah,
maybe going to China because they don't have the resources that we do, and it it's we see it towards the end of the episode. It's plugged in, it's in the proper location, and but we also learn that there's an inside source at the NSA, and that is Ben, the member of the team's father. Ben Ben basically we realize is a rat. He's been telling his father everything the team's been doing, and I think a key reason of why that Next ended up at the NSA because they swarmed because Next wanted to go there. That's 100% true what you said, but also because Ben alerted his father and they stopped it from going to China.
absolutely.
This is a really interesting development because we didn't really see any signs of this prior to this episode.
No, exactly. It was just basically a phone call conversation they have, and he just basically says, "Yeah, like that tip worked. Good job." And we could tell that there's some resentment from Ben right away. Like he maybe doesn't feel like he's doing the right thing. It's also worth mentioning that Ben's father has totally different intentions than what the team has. He wants to use this as a weapon for the United States.
Yeah.
He's like, this will, I think at one point he says like, this will put America into the next millennium. So as basically using it as an ultra weapon. He's very high up in the military. And we could see that, Ben looks up to his father clearly, but, he does question if this is the right move for what they should do with this.
Yeah, and just for a little background info on Ben, just the perception I've gotten from him is he's kind of like a maybe a little bit of a loser in school. Like he doesn't seem to have full confidence in himself, and
Mm-hmm.
his father's definitely his backbone, and he just seems to do whatever his father says. Because I agree with you. On the phone, he has so much apprehension. He says, "Well, I mean, we should probably destroy it," but his dad's like, "No, no, like you said, if we have this, we have control for the next X number of years over the entire
Mm-hmm.
world, and we have domination." And Ben just seems to go along with it because it's what his father tells him is the right thing to do.
Absolutely. He just kind of plays a soldier, just like he did with the FBI when they had suspicions against CM, and they were like, your job is to watch CM. And, even though maybe he didn't feel right about turning on his team like he does now, he did it anyways.
Yeah, yeah, and this is such an interesting development. And just to put it into perspective, they said on the show they described it as this generation's Manhattan Project. Which if nobody's heard of that, it's look it up. It's a massive, you know, plot point in life, but also in many films they use that reference. And it we don't know where it's headed, but we do know that there's a leak inside the team, and the team has no idea that it's there.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So pivoting to the next episode, um, we'll go with episode starts with this kind of another interesting start because it's kind of a foreshadowing start to the episode. It starts with Salazar in an NSA detention center, and they're asking her questions, and we see her crying really profusely, and she says, I was just trying to do what was right for this country, trying to stop Nex from doing damage, and she says we had it, but Paul kind of went rogue and he had one last move, but so did Next. And it's this cryptic end to the scene where we don't have any further information and we don't really get any this episode later on as well. So it's clearly in the next two episodes, I think we'll learn more from this scene.
Yeah, it's only there. I believe there was only one other time in the beginning of an episode started like this, and it was, you're right, it was just her basically being interrogated by NSA, or I didn't even know it was NSA, to be honest, but that makes the most sense at this point. And yeah, you could tell that she looks exhausted, she's tired, and she's just basically trying to convince whoever she's talking to that this is a major issue, and they just don't seem to believe them.
Right. And so, and then the next scene is also another scene that we usually see the first scene of an episode. That's, we don't really know who these people are, but so we see an old couple in a car, and there's this storm, and their car basically stops working. They can't get it to work. It's a new vehicle, so you'd think there's nothing wrong with it, structurally.
Yeah.
And the woman's is in hysterics. She's freaking out. The old guy's just like the average older guy. Figure it out. Like, calm down, Betsy. Like, she's freaking out. They're unable to call 911. So they call their son, who, coincidence or not, works for the National Security Agency.
Yeah, it's a typical, oh, it must be working because I'm doing what I'm supposed to. This guy's basically just following his car's, the auto directions to where it's supposed to go, and then it just says I'm here, but they're in like an empty parking lot.
Right.
And he's just like, well, I'm here, and then the car just dies. And it's like, and yeah, it's it's the classic, it's the classic conflict of time, old people versus technology. Like, even this week, I is helping my grandparents put something on Marketplace. And I mean, it's obviously, it's what divides generations, I guess, because we take it for granted about how much we actually know about technology, but elderly people, it's totally different concept for them, and it's not at all what they grew up with.
No, exactly. So this old couple's just like you said, the man's just like, no, we're here. Like, they could have been going to friggin' Home Depot, and they're in the middle of the road. He goes, oh, we're here.
Actually, Juggy, one of my first thoughts of when that was happening, I thought maybe it would pull an office and go right into the water.
Right.
Like, I thought maybe just to get them. I didn't know what the relation was to them compared to what was going on in the show, but I thought maybe if Nex was trying to get rid of them, maybe they'll just drive them right into the water in the storm. They'll have no idea.
No,
It's dark
I
out.
thought, I kind of thought something similar where they'd be killed, like, because they were threats, but Nex was clearly going after someone in the NSA, just using his parents to get him to leave the office. And we don't know much about this person, but we can clearly tell through the scene that he's an important member of the NSA, because he's clearly a workaholic, because he doesn't tell his people below him really what he's doing. And we see later in the episode that him not being there does cause some problems for the NSA.
Yeah, 100%.
So that goes on. We don't really know anything yet. They're just like this weird couple that are in the middle of the road. While this is also happening, there are rolling blackouts in Alabama. So that continues throughout the episode, but these blackouts are just, I think, Next being at the NSA, they have the ability to shut down power wherever they want. And they start with Alabama, but it continues to grow as the team starts to dig more and more into stopping Next.
Yeah. Yeah, we see all kinds of people in panic. It goes into it later in the episode when Ty and Ethan are together. Some people are going to get resources at the supermarkets, and obviously with that and people maybe being nervous and scared, they lash out, they fight. Probably you can just imagine. It's very similar to what happened here with the pandemic with the
Mm,
toilet paper, and
yeah.
everyone's like, "Oh, well, we're not going to have any TP to last for this whole pandemic." Well, yeah, you can go buy some more, but this is just a classic case of people overreacting.
Yeah, no, agreed completely. And uh, like you said, people fighting in the parking lot, just hysterics everywhere, because the government didn't tell them that this pandemic was going to be this long or however long. These
Exactly.
blackouts were not announced out of the blue, and then people just began freaking out. Um, so during this time, Ben and Gina, they go and trace out this NSA employee that wasn't at the office that day, and
Hmm.
they get to her home, and they realize that she died. She's dead. She's in her closet with a bullet to the skull, and they didn't really go into who killed her. I imagined it was the killer that killed the journalist. That was just my assumption.
Hmm.
But the bigger point in seeing this woman is that she has her access card to the NSA on her.
Hmm.
And Paul says, leave her dead body. She's already dead. Who cares about her? Bring the access card back here. We can use that because we need to break into the NSA so I can plant a virus on it to potentially kill it and end it forever.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean it's and you could tell everyone on the team was totally maybe off guarded by this. It's kind of weird for them not to report a dead body. So they all feel a bit probably off about the whole situation. But Paul, it's probably in the best. It's for a good move. And we'll see it later in the episode. But they're basically using her card right to get in here. But if she's missing, then they'll raise alerts at the NSA.
And yeah, the
Uh,
card will be useless.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, it's obviously something that doesn't feel right, but in the grand scheme of things, they maybe need it in order to to stop next.
Right. So before they can break into the NSA, Paul says that while he was working at Zava, he created this virus
Hmm.
that will kill, that he can plug into next, but it's deep into the Zava hard drive, so he doesn't have it on his person. So in order to get to the NSA, they have to first break into Zava, where Ted is wanted for selling secrets, selling information to the Chinese government,
Yep.
and basically an insider trading of sorts. But he could, it's so bad that it's a weapon like this, he could be facing
Yeah.
year life
Yeah.
sentence in prison. So
Exactly.
Paul's like, well, how the hell are we going to get in here? But Ted basically says, well, why don't I just go with you and we'll figure something out from there.
Yeah. And this episode and last episode, I really have to take it back. I thought with Ted going almost rogue with next, I thought there was no turning back from it. I thought he'd be so power hungry with everything that's happened in his life and the clash with his brother. I thought there's no way that he'd become more of an important hero than he was a villain.
Right.
But he totally flipped sides, I'd say, on this episode because you could really see that he's sacrificing everything, but he's doing the right thing for it.
Yeah, no, I completely agreed. We mentioned last week about how his acting chops as a villain are very good. And, in Ozark, we kind of saw him go back and forth. And I thought, he did another great acting performance here where he's forced to be both people. And I think, Joseph Butler Herner does it very well, where he can pivot naturally without it seeming, fake or, looking weird.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly.
So there, so he, Ted goes in to Zava. The guy at the door is basically like, wait, Ted, why are you here? Like, the FBI is looking for you, right? And he goes, oh yeah. I'm just coming into work. And he
Yeah.
goes, well, I have to call them, right? And he's like, yeah, just do your job. So clearly, Ted wants the FBI to know that he's there. So when he gets there, he uses his passcode to get in, which they have this little, everything's fine. He goes up the stairs. The FBI's like, yeah, we're going to have to chat. And he goes, no problem. I didn't do anything wrong. Let's figure this out. But
Yeah.
when he went in, they had this little PIN code and his access card so that now Salazar and Abby, who are back, and Gina and CM have complete vision of the entire Zava building so they can direct Paul through the building without any problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, what happens when Ted goes in? He's in this old beater car, and he kind of laughs. He's like, "Oh yeah, like this is a rental." As he's passing these security guards, but Paul is in the back of the trunk, and this is the plan the whole time to sneak Paul in so that he's able to grab this virus because it has to be done manually. It can't be done
Right.
anywhere else, and it has to be done in his old office.
Exactly. So Paul, they do that. So Salazar and Abby start directing Paul through the building. He's got this old Red Sox hat on, Fenway Park hat on. It's kind of funny. He's just walking around. And Paul LeBlanc, he doesn't tell Abby and Salazar a lot. Like he ends the phone call abruptly, goes into stairwells that they don't have access to, and they're freaking out, but he's fine. He's just like, okay, well, this is normal. Like I can get there. And he gets up the stairs. But this another thing. Before, everything was going smoothly, but Ben was in the room. So Ben knows that what they're doing. And he obviously knows this is a potential threat to his father's future plans. He calls his dad, and the FBI starts swarming the building looking for Paul.
Yeah. Yeah, it's another move. You just kind of cringe. You're like, oh, like Ben, what are you doing? And he's such a key piece to this team. But I mean, the more he tells his father, and the more the more loyal he is to his father, the worse it seems to be for the team. And yeah, obviously, like as you said, like the FBI just end up swarming the whole building, looking for Paul and seeing where he can be because they realize his intentions. But yeah, no, I mean, just Ben, just being Ben now, like and again, like to what we said earlier, you could tell, like it just irks him to give this information to his dad because he knows it's not right.
No, exactly. He's conflicted. He has feelings for Gina, which he kind
Yeah,
of tells her about.
I didn't see that coming.
No,
Did
me
you?
either.
Yeah.
You kind of sensed a CM Gina romance blooming,
Uh,
because they seem to be bonding more and more as the episodes go by. But he
mhm.
kind of tells her that he has feelings for her. She doesn't really. She's just kind of like, oh, that's nice, whatever. She's kind of a direct woman in that way. Like she's just no bullshit.
Yeah.
Um, but so while Ben called his dad, Agent Wilson, Paul is basically scrambling, and he goes, "Well, I got to get to that office." So he starts walking through the hallway. Everybody's like, "Oh, that's Paul LeBlanc. That's Paul LeBlanc." He goes into his office, and it's turned into a break room, which is really funny.
Yeah.
And they're all eating snacks, and there's vending machines in there, and he's just like, he pulls out a gun, which we did not know that he had. Neither did Salazar or Abby, and locks the door. And he takes 3 hostages and says, "Get in the ground, or I'll kill you." Then he voices, "I'm not really gonna kill you." He basically tells them they're in no immediate danger, but he's got to pretend like this is charade so that he can plug his USB into the server there so he can download the virus.
Yeah, it's a really funny scene, because I mean, here's this hostage situation. He's supposed to, and everyone there is completely shocked and freaking out, and he's just just being Paul. He's just like, yeah, like No, I think there's one part where he goes up to the vending machine and
Yeah.
he tries to put $1 in from one of these girls, and he's like, "Oh, I'd kill for a candy bar right now," and they're all like looking up at him like, "What the hell is wrong with
He
this
goes,
guy?" He's
that's a
like, "Oh
poor
no,
choice of words.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a poor choice of words, but yeah, it was a funny scene. He's like, "Who made these pieces of shit?" And he
Yeah.
looks over, and there's a plaque of him
Yeah.
right there. He's like, "Oh fuck, maybe we should let this world go."
Yeah.
It's kind of just a funny scene, like a lighthearted and such a serious moment.
Right. So he's just having fun with it while trying to be serious. The FBI calls him and he's really arrogant with them too. They're like, why don't you let some hostages go? He goes, why don't you kiss my ass? Something to that nature. And he's got a stall so it can download. And he's,
Mm,
he's saying that he wants to be the CEO again of Zava and just asking for demands.
yeah,
And
yeah.
Ted says, put me on the phone, still playing up this charade that he's, not with Paul on this shtick.
Hmm.
And while they're on the phone, Paul has one of his episodes. He thinks the door's being open and he starts freaking out. He tells them to push back the guards. The FBI is like what the hell? Like, we're not there.
Hmm.
And towards the end of the scene, he ends up firing his weapon when nobody was outside the door.
Hmm. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like he's on the phone with Abby and Salazar, who are back at this, I would say, we could say headquarters or home
Yeah.
base, wherever they're at, and they're like, no, like Paul, like there's no one behind. Like they can see the cameras outside the door, and
Mm-hmm.
they know that there's no one there. But it's like you said, and this was a fear that they had all along. Like if he was running a one man show and someone wasn't with him, that this something like this could happen. Like he's, I would say, mentally ill. He has a disability in a way,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, he just lets loose and he just lets one go, and luckily there's no one there.
Right. Yeah. There's nobody even close, so it doesn't hit anybody. He's kind of worried because he snaps back into it and he goes, "Did I hit anybody?" Like
Yeah.
he doesn't want to hurt anybody here. And at this point, he decides to release the hostages, and he's got the whole thing downloaded. He decides to release the hostages, which really he released them to give himself more time. He
Exactly.
lets the hostages go.
And also we'll get into it, but for another reason as well.
Yeah. So he lets them go. The FBI is kind of asking them questions like what he was doing. They said he was using the hard drive, but they have no reason why. And when they decide to swarm the room, they walk in and he's not there.
Yeah.
Salazar and Abby think that he's going to be taken because they don't know how he got the hell out of there.
Hmm.
We realize that in his old office, he had an escape room. Basically, it was a panic room, but an escape room where he could exit the building without being seen by anybody.
Hmm. So which is why he sent these hostages out so they couldn't rat on him,
Yeah,
tell the FBI where he was going to.
right. No, exactly. So he gets to escape. Um, he calls Salazar and Abby saying, "I'm on a bus. I'll tell you where you can pick me up."
Hmm.
So in this, they basically finished half of what they needed to do. They needed to get this virus. Step two is they need to break into the NSA. And during this whole process, CM and Gina created a new access card for her. She's going to be the one breaking in, a woman being less suspicious. She's just, run of the mill. And I'm thinking towards in the next episode, she will be going to the NSA, breaking in.
Yeah, undercover, totally, like just making this whole new profile of her for the NSA's system to
Yeah.
get into. But yeah, no, there's a really cool scene. Obviously, as Paul is escaping, they take Ted into custody.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought of was, wow, this is kind of almost like when Paul was escorted out of his company as well. Like it's very similar situation where everyone's watching. You can see that everyone's got their phones up, and the FBI's got him in cuffs. He's being taken out. But instead of like maybe putting his head down or like just kind of being mopey, like he just gives a smile because I think he knows finally what he's doing. He did something for the right reason, and that
Right.
was going to help for the greater good.
No, completely agreed. His demeanor has changed, and normally, if he would have got caught, if he had the next power and he got caught, he would have been irate or sad. He just seemed completely at peace.
Hmm.
He got to go out in his own terms,
Hmm.
and he was going to be arrested anyway.
Yeah.
So for him to help the team get closer to stopping something that he had a part in creating was a sense of satisfaction for him for sure.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, and then towards the end of this episode, we go back to Ty and Ethan. They're in Oregon with Ty's parents. They're just kind of hanging out. There's no real technology there, and but towards the end of the episode, their house loses power, and we see that spikes across the world, and cities are starting to lose power more and more, and that includes Oregon where they're located. And the episode ends with Salazar trying to call them, and she can't.
Hmm. Yeah, no, she's super worried. They earlier in the episode, her and Ty have a conversation basically saying like, I think you're really safest here, not there. Like, this place is completely secure, like Nex can't get to it.
Mhm.
And we still see that resistance coming from Ty because of the shady past of Salazar. And even Ethan brings it up, and he's like, Eliza said like this is going to happen, you guys were going to be
Right.
split up. And Ty kind of reassures them that everything's okay, couples just fight. But what do you like from a standpoint for him? What do you think? Would you try to take him to where Salazar is, or would you remain there in Oregon?
I, yeah, it's a tough call. I'd probably side with Ty just because wherever Salazar is, there's going to be danger regardless. So
Hmm.
say Oregon's not safe for sure,
Yeah.
but being with her is not safe either because she's the face of the takedown. Her and Paul trying to
Hmm.
kill next. So it's going to try to get to them, I think, regardless. So it's probably not great that they're there. I expect in the final two episodes, they'll,
Something's gonna
something's definitely
happen.
going to happen. But I don't mind Ty doing this because he's just doing what he thinks is right. And his wife is in a compromised position right now where she's not thinking for her son's safety.
I feel the same way. The only thing I thought of two things when the power was out and they're having this conversation.
Mm,
One, how easy would it be for Next to do the same thing that it did to the journalist in the last episode and
yeah.
killing him, to send someone there to kill them, kind of
Right.
like what they did with the father. And I also thought, like, if all the power goes out and if it's for an extended period of time, I've watched enough apocalyptic movies that I could just see, break-ins happening, people kind of going a little crazy because they have no idea what's going on and they might think it's the end of the world. You know what I mean? I don't know where the show will take it, but that's the two thoughts I had.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. I watched this show called Revolution, and it was basically where the world loses all its power and it's mass chaos because it's all around the world. And it, I could see people doing the same, depending on where they're staying. If they're in a high income neighborhood or something, poor people are likely going to go there thinking there's better resources. So
Yeah.
there's a potential threat there. But yeah, with two episodes to go, there's a lot still to come because beginning of this episode, we've seen Salazar getting questioned by the NSA. So that doesn't really bode well, in my opinion, for their chances of killing Next right away because it it sure seems like they're going to get caught.
Yeah, I mean, there's too many things going against them. Now that it seems like Nex has all these resources that it needs at the NSA, it feels like that it's really like it's at its most dangerous, I would say, if that makes
Right.
any sense. And also with what happened at the beginning of this episode and Salazar saying, Paul went rogue, it kind of leaves this mystery ending of, maybe we know, maybe this doesn't turn out the way we think, where they stop this thing, and maybe this thing does something with Paul that
Mm-hmm.
you know allows it to spread this virus and create chaos.
Yeah, another interesting development will be what Ben does because Gina's the one breaking in and he has feelings for her. And if she got caught breaking in, they mentioned it in the episode, that's a life sentence. Breaking
Exactly.
into like a national security
Yeah.
building. That's a
I
threat against the United States.
I think we're gonna see Ben step up in a way to go against his father,
Yeah,
and he's finally going to say, that like I got to do the right thing here. And I think that will happen. I don't think it'll happen this episode coming up from the
the
ninth,
final one.
but I think in the final one is where he'll do something maybe to rebellious against his father.
Yeah, I think that's the only way they win because without it, he's going to tell his father everything. There's no way they can really destroy it
Yeah.
because he'll have everything covered and there'll be no element of surprise. So, no, really two solid episodes again. Like I agree with you. You said at the beginning, I've really enjoyed the show. I think it's been really good. I've enjoyed covering it with you, and I'm looking forward to the final two episodes because I really don't know where the show is going to take it. It can go in a lot of different ways right now.
hmm Yeah, for people watching it, I don't know if people watching it live as we go along with here. Both episodes, I believe, are airing tonight,
Yeah,
correct?
that's
Both
correct.
9 and 10. And also, I don't. It's kind of sad, but the show I believe is not going to go on after this. Am I wrong in
Yeah,
that sense?
it was booked as a one season show.
Yeah, so it's essentially canceled after this. But I mean, that leaves all kinds of there's not going to be anything going on past this, so we can expect a really exciting last two episodes.
I don't mind that because I think we're going to get two better episodes
Yeah,
because there's not going to be a cliffhanger.
exactly. Yeah,
So
I
yeah,
feel the same way.
there's going to be a conclusion to this, which will be interesting, and a lot of loose ends still to tie up here. I think Ted was arrested. I still think he can play a role in this somehow. I
Yeah,
think he's been in the show too much already for him not to be at least prominently featured in the last two episodes.
I feel the same way. I wouldn't be surprised to see Ted's team either.
Mm,
Maybe
yeah.
work somehow with Paul and our team because clearly they have a lot of knowledge and they're very skilled.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know what they could do, but they could definitely provide some kind of support against battling it.
No, 100% agree. So yeah, that's basically all we have for you today. Shamus, any big Christmas plans? Any plans over the break?
I got no plans, man. I'm just going to bunker on in and relax. I have next week off, so that's great. Gonna catch up on some other shows I've been watching and some movies I wanted to watch for quite a while. I'm not a big Christmas movie guy. I've never really been. I like the elves. I like I like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. That's those kind of kids shows, but no, I don't got any major plans. Probably see you eventually.
Mm-hmm.
What about yourself?
Yeah, obviously spend time with the family lots. But also like World Juniors and
I was gonna say most of your time will be consumed this Christmas holiday with sports and re-entering the world.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I plan on doing a podcast after every Team Canada game, so
Oh, nice.
that'll keep me busy. But I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, the NBA kicking off tonight with two really good games,
Yeah.
so I'm excited for that. But football, basketball, hockey on at the same time for the first time since March, so I'm thrilled, and yeah, the clicker will be flying come Friday.
Oh yeah, I can just imagine. Anything else you've been watching? I know you've been watching Your Honor. Have you continued watching that throughout or?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. No, pretty good show. Trying to think of something else I've watched recently. Mostly just sports right now.
That's just dead time. And
Yeah, letter Kenny every now and then just for a laugh.
yeah, the new season coming up this
Christmas.
Christmas Day, right?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So new season of that Christmas Day on Crave. So that should be good. Or not so bad as they say. But how about you? Any new shows? You finished the Gambit. So what's next on the docket?
Ah, man, I don't know. I'm trying to cipher through. I really, really want to start watching The Wire from HBO.
Oh, great
I've
show.
never watched it yet, and I've heard so many great
Oh,
things.
great
Uh,
show.
especially especially from people who've watched The Sopranos and kind of put it to that. Like, not every episode is super, action packed, but there's always something good going on. So I'm really trying to probably get into that over the holidays as well.
Yeah, the 100% recommend that one. It's probably one of the top 5 shows ever made. So it's great. But no, I've really enjoyed these so far, Shay. Like I said, next week will be your season finale of Next. After that, where this goes is up to you. But happy holidays, my friend. I'm sure we'll get together over the break.
Appreciate that. Happy holidays to everybody watching or listening at home.
Awesome. I'll be back tomorrow morning, but until then, we'll talk soon.